And we're here.
Hello.
Happy Tuesday. Happy Valentine's Day.
Happy Valentine's Day. Can you imagine we would have a Tuesday show on Valentine's Day? And we've got a very exciting guest here today. But before we bring our guest up, this is episode 26 of the Author Adventure. You can find all of our previous 25 shows at our YouTube channel, The Author Adventure. You can look up Author Adventure on YouTube or just the @ Author Adventure. And you should be able to see that. And you'll see this gold and purple and yellow kind of background. You'll know you found us. So please go and subscribe to the show so you can hear these wonderful interviews with these great authors. But real quick, before we bring Nancy Churnin in, we just want to do a little, I guess, quick self-promotion here, Russ. So
yes.
You tell our audience what we're kind of working on right now.
Well, we've been cooking some things in the background, and one of the things that I think is really important, we've been talking about the show, we've been producing the show, we've been talking to all these wonderful authors, and everybody has a story and everybody has an adventure. And one of the things that is a common thread among all authors is getting started and producing results. And we thought that it would be beneficial for everyone in the community if we actually set that standard and got started, wrote a book, published a book, shared the book, and produced this outcome, because it's really important to set the example and share the information and the experience that we have with other authors that are thinking, should I, do I, could I, can I? And it's absolutely an adventure, and we want to have you join us on your own adventure.
Right. And I talked to a lady this morning, a longtime friend, and she's written a story, a children's book. And, her basically thing is it good enough? Is it good enough to publish? I mean, I wrote it and told it, I tell it to my granddaughter, I wrote it for her. She's 7. And so wondering if it's any good. So once you get something down, you've got the manuscript, you at least got it partially written, it's going to go through the editing process, but get it as good as you can. And then start talking to somebody, either get in a critique group or find somebody that you can partner with to maybe do some of those things that you're not so good at. We're going to be talking today about traditional publishing, and so that'll be exciting because a lot of our authors that we've talked to have self-published and they've kind of done their own thing and managed that creative process. So let's bring Nancy up. Nancy Churnin, without any
further ado.
Further ado, that's the word I'm looking for. Hi, Nancy. It's so great to have you.
Welcome, Nancy. And Liz, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to step out and let you to talk about traditional publishing and the whole process and what got Nancy started and how she keeps up with this effort that she's
prolific writing that she has going on.
Thank you so much. I also have some slides that we can share. So just let me know when you want to have me share those slides. I'll be happy to accommodate there. All right.
Okay. Sounds great.
See you in a while.
Hey, Liz. All right. Hey, Nancy. Well, thanks so much for joining us. So like you say, this is our show about the art and business of publishing. And we basically, what we consider the 5 secrets are writing, publishing, launching, marketing, and distribution, because marketing is in our mind is the promotional piece. The distribution is the selling piece. And there's so many different markets, as you know, that you can sell to. And so we try to talk about some of those other things like military or churches. Everybody knows about libraries and bookstores, but we're trying to share some of those other things. But excited for you to be here. So how did you start your writing journey? Tell us a little bit about that and why you chose children's books and why you chose factual, real characters. What was there about that you liked?
Well, I spent many years as a journalist. I wrote for the Los Angeles Times in San Diego before coming to Texas and working at the Dallas Morning News, where I worked for 19 years. And so the skills were just very well honed in writing stories, writing them quickly, writing true stories, interviewing people, doing research. I was comfortable with all of that. And actually, I got my start with it. I've always dreamed about writing children's books, but nothing much was happening with that. until I had an article that ran in the paper, and it elicited a thank you note from somebody that was very unusual. So the article that ran was about a high school in Garland, Texas that was having a play called The Signal Season of Dummy Hoy. And I was so for this because really the high schools usually do musicals.
Right. Yeah, they do.
I'd never heard of this play before. I was curious. I called, I asked questions. I found out that the play was co-written by a man named Alan Meyer, who has a daughter who is deaf, very interested in the deaf community. It was the true story of William Hoy, who was when Lincoln was president, wanted to play baseball. He was deaf. They said, how can you play? You can't hear the umpire's calls. He teaches them his language, sign language, safe, out. This is what signal season. I went, this is amazing. Wrote the
amazing story.
I know. And I got a thank you note from a man in Columbus, Ohio named Steve Sandy. And I'm going, well, I always like getting a thank you note, but why is someone in Columbus, Ohio interested in a high school play in Garland, Texas?
Right.
And it turned out that Steve Sandy had everything about William Hoy on Google Alert. He's a friend of the Hoy family. His dream is for Hoy to become better known. We started emailing back and forth. I wanted to make his dream come true. I promised him I'd write a children's book.
Right. And so that's how you got started. So that's the first one, the William Hoy story of a deaf baseball player. So that's just fabulous. Well, yeah, and that's that's the thing. There's so many of these ordinary people who did extraordinary things, and we don't know their stories, but they are role models, and they can be role models, especially for kids and kids, that have certain issues. And Christy, our friend Christy, she says we all have some kind of disability, Liz. It may be social, it may be physical, it may be mental, it may be emotional. I mean, but we all have issues and things that we struggle with. And so to hear these stories of people that struggled and then were successful and achieved something great, and I know that's kind of a backstory for all of your stories that you're telling. And so I think that's just great. And I appreciate you coming, and maybe, like you say, we can share that here on the show and more people will know about that and go check these books out. So all your books, available on Amazon and Barnes Noble across platforms, I'm assuming,
and independent bookstores. You can go to your independent bookstore, and you can either you can request or order it. Most of them are in libraries, just about all of them. If they're not in the library, you can request them, and you can also get them from the publishers, because again, these are commercially published.
Right. So that's what in commercial, and Nancy means by that is traditional publishing, commercial publishing. These are bigger publishers that already have, a network in the stores and into bookstores and libraries and schools, because they publish multiple, books for multiple authors, versus an independent or someone that self-publishes, and then maybe they put the stories up themselves on these platforms. So well, that's exciting. Well, so you just started with that, but did you go out and find an agent after that for the other books, or was it just you looked at the publishers, or you sent stuff to publishers?
Well, you know what, when I was telling you about this, I made it sound so simple, didn't I? But I'm being very honest. I promised my friend Steve Sandy in 2003 that I would write this book so the kids would know about this great deaf hero. And also one of Steve Sandy's dreams was that they would write letters to get him in the National Baseball Hall of Fame.
Hall of Fame. Okay.
I made this promise where there are no deaf players honored there so far. So I made the promise in 2003. This book came out in 2016.
Right.
It didn't take you long to do the math, I'm sure. Why did it take long? Because I wanted to go commercial, and I was getting a lot of rejections. So I really what I had to learn was picture book writing was different from newspaper writing. Now, I learned a lot from being a journalist. I mean, I learned to research. I learned to write quickly. But writing quickly wasn't going to do the job of learning how to write a picture book, the structure, the form, getting the emotions into it. See, all these years I've been trained to keep the emotions out of it. And I learned to identify, bring the emotions into it. There's an old saying, no tears in the writer, no tears in the reader.
Right, right.
I had to make myself vulnerable, and I took classes, I took programs. I got my agent before my agent actually sold this very first book. I got my agent in 2013.
Right.
There's a wonderful group called 12 by 12 Challenge run by Julie Hedlund. You were encouraged to send to, there was an agent of the month, and I sent my version of the William Hoy story. Again, this is in 2013, so 10 years
ago. Right, right.
Yep. But she liked it right away, and she took it on. And then she got some rejections before it finally sold in 2000, I think 14,
right,
and it came out in 2016.
Yeah, so that's it. I mean, and we always tell people that author and being an author and being a writer is a journey. You know, it's not a one and done kind of thing. It's not something you're going to do in a few weeks or a month. And that's why you got to write about something you know or like, because you're going to live with it for years, maybe. I mean, my first book, I've got it 30 years and I'm still selling that book, and I still take that book out again, you know, when I go out and talk about it, and people still like it. And so, you know, you got to just be in it for the long term. You can never give up. A lot of our authors have said their best advice is never give up, just keep plugging away. We had a gentleman on who's actually a pastor, and Alex Haley told him 30 years ago he needed to write a novel. And he finally got it published last year. You know, he finally did. He's been working on it all these years, but the 12th revision is what he finally ended up publishing. But he went and learned script writing. He went and learned to write shorter, which I think probably the newspaper helped you do that. I mean, I think it certainly is, being a journalism major and then having an advertising company is put me way ahead of a lot of people, just by the nature of, you know, I have skills and access to resources, people as well, as the knowledge, you know, to make some things happen. So that's great. Well, that's fun. So, and then what was it saying? And I only want, you know, Nancy's got a lot of books. Nancy's got 10 books, I guess, and then she's got
10 books out now, 6 more coming out next year. And you know what? I know you were going to ask me about this book, and this book so typifies what we were just talking about, not giving up. So I find myself really drawn to stories. You also have to find the stories that draw you, right? And the things you're going to stick with are the ones that speak to your heart. And so after William Hoy, which I wrote really to make my friend's dream come true, and ended up making my own dream come true, becoming an author, which I wasn't even thinking so much. But then I went, what's my next book going to be? And I found the story of this man, Dashrath Manjhi, true story, lives in India in a poor village, where the kids they have to climb a 300-foot mountain to get to school on the other side.
Wow.
Sick to get to a doctor, the elderly to get to markets. And so he's not rich, he's not famous, he's not powerful. I always say to the kids, was he the biggest? Was he the strongest? No. Strong in his heart. Where can we all be strong? In our hearts.
Yeah.
To me. So all he has in the world are 3 goats. He trades them for a used hammer and chisel. He starts chiseling a path through the mountain, and everyone starts laughing at him. And how do you identify with this guy who lived in India, who was a laborer? He has goats. He's chiseling a mountain. And I said, that's how I felt when I wrote the William Hoy story. I felt like I was a mountain. And
climbing the mountain.
Laughing at me because I promised in 2003. It doesn't come out till 2016. And people said, is this really going to happen? I mean, are you putting yourself into? And they laughed at him and laughed at him. 22 years later, there's a path to the mountain. So 13 years seemed like nothing.
Right, after 22, for sure. Yeah.
And a great interview that I read in my research where this guy interviews Dashrath Manjhi, and he says, well, how did you feel when they were all laughing at you? Well, how did that make you feel? Did you want to give up? He said, oh, no, that made me want to do it even more.
That made me want to prove him wrong. Yeah. So there's something.
But, you know, he didn't do it for himself. He didn't make a penny out of this. Later, the Indian government wanted to thank him. They gave him land. He turned around, gave it to his village, said, build a hospital, build a school. This guy was not in it for himself. He honestly just wanted to make things better for others. And I just admired him so much. So I write about the people I admire. That's one common theme you'll find in my
common thing.
writing about the people who inspire me, the people who made the world a better place. not the biggest, not the strongest, but they persevere. They can't be laughed out of their dreams. And all you writers out there, don't be laughed out of your dreams.
That's right. Yeah. And that's it. And we would do this. I mean, we have this show to create this safe space for people to come when you don't believe in yourself. Come here
Yes,
because we believe in you. And these
yes,
authors that we're interviewing, they're going to tell you these stories. And everybody's kind of done it in a different way. And sometimes it's just, sometimes most of the time it takes a long time. Every once in a while, somebody gets lucky and they hit it right off the bat and something goes pretty well, or they get picked up or something happens. But it's always a challenge and it's always a struggle, and you learn from it though. You learn from the struggle, and so you got to stay with it. And yeah, and we wanted to talk about these people of color because obviously it's Black History Month. We've got Women's History Month coming up, and so that's why I wanted to go through some of your great books. You've got Martin and Anne, the kindred spirits of Martin Luther King and Anne Frank, and I think, well, that's a really interesting concept. And how did you kind of come up with that, or where did that come from?
that is so interesting. So Martin and Anne, okay, I'll show you a nice copy of this. So I was feeling, what? Again, they come from very emotional places.
Yeah.
So this was in 2017 when this idea started germinating, and where it started was I was seeing a rise in hate crimes.
Right.
And it was getting me really down because, we want to think that in our development as human beings that we're getting better.
We're getting better. Yeah.
More loving, kinder, more inclusive. And instead I felt like we were going backwards, and I was getting really down. And I realized that's not a good place to go. So I tried to think of people who kept their but never gave up when things were bad, never gave up on the human race, never stopped advocating for kindness and for
love and hope and joy. Yeah.
So I thought of Dr. King because look at what he went through, and he never gave up hope that we could create a better world together. And I thought of Anne Frank. In her diary, she never gives up on the human race. She even says, "I believe that people are truly good at heart." And she's saying this during the Holocaust.
Yeah.
So
I
looked at them both, and I realized they're both born in the same year, 1929. And then it's what was going on in 1929. We had a stock market crash, we had the Great Depression, and these economic issues, people brings out the worst in people. They
brings out the race to people. Yeah.
And then I started almost making a Venn diagram of what was going on with them at the same times in their lives.
And they were in different parts of the world, but the same thing, experienced some of the same hatred, like you say, and the same,
Exactly, Liz. Exactly. So I always start out presenting this. I say, look at all the ways in which they're different. We have different genders, races, religions, parts of the world, different languages. They seem as different as can be. And by the time you finish the book and you see how they couldn't go to their neighborhood schools, how they were excluded from activities growing up because of race, because of religion, how they both turned to words to articulate their vision of a better world. Again, you authors out there, words are important.
Words are important. Yeah. Yeah. Words, they build our lives, and they take, and they take lives and they give life, and they're so much more important than we think.
Exactly. And that we don't remember Martin and Anne because they were the biggest or the strongest, because they went football games and they didn't give concerts.
Right. That's right.
We remember them because of the quality of their words and the words that came from their hearts and their souls, and that they still inspire us and they guide us. They give us light to help guide us as we try and build a better world for our children.
Right. For sure. So I love that. And I think that's really great. And that is, and so that's a contrast, because you've got some, like you say, comparison and contrasting going on, the things they have in common, the things they don't have in common. And as a writer, you want to look at some of those things. You want to say, do I want to write it like this or like this? And there's a lot of different ways that people can write. And so that's the other thing we want people to know here. Nancy doesn't write a story the way Liz writes a story, but that's okay. And so if you're John or Jane or or Keisha or whoever you are, and you want to write a story, write that story, write it your way. And eventually there's going to be somebody that's interested in that story. There are people that are out there that want to know, they want to hear the stories. They're going to like what you write, and they're going to want to follow you and do that. So you can find Nancy at nancychurninbooks.com. So that's NancyChurnin books, BOOKS.
Oh, it's nancychurnin.com, no books in it.
.com. Okay, I'm sorry. Nancy Churnin Books might be your Facebook page, I think.
That's my Facebook. You got my Facebook. Nancy Churnin.
Okay, great. So Nancy Churnin Books is the Facebook page. So if you go to Facebook, you can look her up there. If you go to her website, it's www.nancychurnin.com.
You got it.
Just her name. And so that's great. So you can look all of her books up there. You can find her books at Amazon, at bookstores, at independent bookstores, at chain bookstores, at libraries and schools. So go look her up. Well, let's talk a bit about Beautiful Shades of Brown.
Thank you. And I just want to say, Liz, what you're doing here is so important in this program. And you are so right. There's no competition in writing these books, right, because everybody's voice is unique. The way you tell a story, or the stories that speak to you, the kids need all the stories and they need all the voices. And we're not in competition. We're here to support each other. The kids can't have too many books.
Right. That's right. I agree.
And type of books will make them want more books, which is a good thing. So I'm so honored to be on your program, Liz, and the fact that you support all the writers and all the voices. It's so needed. This was a real honor to write. Beautiful Shades of Brown is a true story of Laura Wheeler Waring. It's the only book about her. I fell in love with this painting. By the way, this is an all Texas connection.
Okay, good.
I fell in love with this painting of Marian Anderson, the great singer.
Right.
I wanted to know who created this.
That painting, yeah.
It was Laura Wheeler Waring. I went, who? And then I went on a detective hunt to try and find her. There's no book about her. I went all the way to talk to a curator at the Smithsonian, which is where the painting was. The family. I mean, really, this was a detective hunt. And I love it. So fortunate when I wrote this story about this woman. She was determined to see paintings of people who looked like her and her family on museum walls. And museum walls were just really not representative. They really still have a long way to go to being representative, but then they weren't at all. And now today her paintings are in the Smithsonian. Look, my illustrator, Felicia Marshall, is from Houston. She studied at Pratt. Okay, this is amazing. This is a photo, don't you?
Yeah.
My picture's a photo. That is a self-portrait.
Oh, wow. She painted that. Wow.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I mean, illustration there are a lot of people that can draw and do art, but there's illustrating books is a whole different thing. And that's just fabulous. Look at her things. Isn't that fabulous? Yeah, it's beautiful.
Even it was like she draws Laura, she paints Laura Wheeler Waring, and I'm looking at this dress she's putting her in. I'm thinking, Felicia, you could have put her in a simple shift. She puts her in the most complicated dress.
Like you think to draw or paint, but that's just that was the vision. That's what she saw in her head, and to be able to put it down in paint and ink and color, it's just fabulous.
And the other thing she did that's so brilliant, that one of the points, it's called Beautiful Shades of Brown, because one thing that Laura Wheeler Waring, the painter, wanted people to know was that the color brown is not monolithic, that everybody's skin is a different color, a different tone. You would mix in all sorts of different colors. That brown is a mixture of many different colors. Depending on how much you put of each, the brown is different. And look what Felicia Marshall does. She also makes that point. Look at the different shades of brown she shows.
Shades of brown. Yeah. Yeah.
Isn't that incredible? And kids are like so wowed by it. And I've been so honored. I mean, one of the reasons I've liked work, I mean, I know that there are different ways to working, and some people prefer self-publishing. The thing I've loved about commercial publishing is that I don't feel my strength is in art. My strength is in the words. And this way the editor actually picks the illustrator. I've been so fortunate to work with editors who have found me such brilliant illustrators.
Brilliant illustrators. Yeah.
The illustrator, by the way, for Martin and Ann is Yevgenia Nayberg. She's from Ukraine. She lives in New York City, but she's from Ukraine. And
and my male illustrator that I was talking about, she's from Turkey. She's from Istanbul, you know, and it's just fascinating that we can work with people all over the world, or you know, because we have that common art and, you know, writing and words that breaks down barriers, just like music does, and sports. You know, there are those things that, you know, that lift our souls and give us a soul connection with people, you know, we've never seen before or never met in person, but, you know, we can do these projects together. It's really cool. I really like that piece of it too.
And the kids really can connect with the pictures, can take them places. It's not, again, it's not a competition between illustrator and author. And they come together. I mean, the illustrators telling their own stories. You saw this one. This is all watercolors. The illustrator here is Danny Popovich. And his watercolors are incredible.
Yeah,
I would see them come over and I'm going, wow.
Right.
I didn't do that, but it's so
you know, so exciting. Yeah, it's so incredible.
And I love that.
Yeah,
I love being surprised.
Right. It's so incredible for sure. So, well, we don't have too much time. The 30 minutes goes so fast, so we certainly will, Nancy, have to have you come back. But yeah, let's talk about Charlie Takes His Shot. Okay. And this is obviously close to my heart too. My brother's a golfer. He played golf at North Texas and SMU on the golf team. And we actually do a golf, memorial golf classic for my dad, in honor of my dad, who was actually a baseball coach and a football coach. But all of his guys, you know, play golf. All the guys that grew up playing baseball and football for him, the bunch of them are big golfers. So they were like, why don't we do a golf tournament in honor of coach? So I love this. So this is Charlie Seifert, right? Seifert, huh?
Charlie Seifert, yeah, he's the first black golfer on the PGA Tour. And if you want a little baseball connection, one of his friends was Jackie Robinson. And you know, Charlie wanted to do for golf what Jackie did for baseball. They stayed friends all their lives, and Jackie advocated for him. And Charlie really opened the door that Tiger Woods walked through. All the kids think Tiger Woods was the first black golfer. And that's the reason that Tiger Woods named his son Charlie. He named Charlie Woods his name for Charlie Seifert.
Right. Isn't that great?
Well, illustrated by John Joven. So, I always like to credit the illustrators. So fortunate, and they really tell their own wonderful stories.
Yeah, well, and since you had the books, we did have the videos, but we really don't need to use those. We're down here to the last minute. And I just wanted to say, you know, if there's what would be your best advice to somebody that's wanting to write, that's wanting to publish, wanting to do? Where's their best chances? Is it the Writer's Digest or the Writers and Editors? I know they have guides and stuff. I think Jeff Herman just came out with an updated version of agents and publishers, editors.
Well, you know, it depends. In the children's book world, which is the world I'm more conversant in, the Society of Children's Book Writers and Illustrators, SCBWI, and they've got a North Texas chapter.
Right.
And they've got, you know, regional offices all over the country. And now because things are virtual, it allows you to tap into writers groups all over the country. You can find a critique group through there. Having critique groups, I meet with them regularly. Having other people
read your stuff is important.
But it's a support system. You need your program is a support system, and you need to find your own like mini support systems where you can share your manuscripts, and not only people help you get the manuscript better, but you need the emotional support too, because it's a lonely business. And just don't give up. As long as you don't give up, it's a question of how much time it takes you to succeed.
Right. And that's it. And so, and once you do, it's, you know, once you hold the book in your hand, I mean, there's nothing like it. There's nothing like somebody coming up to you and say, I read your story and I just loved it. Thank you so much for sharing this. I mean, it just blows you away. And it's, So, well, I appreciate it so much. I mean, the time goes so fast. It just, I'm like, I want to stay and keep talking. But we will have you come back when you've got 5 new books or 6 new books coming out this next year. So, as those start to roll out, maybe we can get you in the middle there, and we'll talk about those other books you've got.
Love hanging out with you and Russ. It's great.
All right. Well, that would be great. Russ, you want to come back in? You got any other questions, or are we going to wrap up?
No, I just really enjoyed the information and the stories from Nancy. Thank you so much for joining us, Nancy, because this is, like you said, this is a real gift to somebody that is thinking, considering, or reflecting on what they can write and the stories that are in their minds, and just have to get out to the book. Because it's important for people to share their stories, and there's somebody out there waiting for those stories to be told. Just like you mentioned, there's somebody out there that wants to hear these stories. So please don't hesitate. Get a hold of Liz or I, and let's talk about writing your stories, producing your stories, publishing your stories, the 5 secrets of success, so you can have the adventure of a lifetime for yourself. So I really appreciate you being here, Nancy.
Oh,
thank
you
so
for all you
much
do for the writing community. We need all those stories. Thank you for being such a wonderful support and providing all these great resources.
Well, thanks so much, Nancy. We appreciate you. So this has been episode 26 of the Author Adventure, the 5 Secrets to Publishing Success. We're here every Tuesday at 5 o'clock. We hope you'll come back and see us next week, 5 p.m. Central Standard Time. Thanks so much for watching, and you can always come back and listen to these shows. They're archived at YouTube and on our podcast platforms. Have a great day. See you next time.
Take care.
Thank you.